I'm Katie, 58 years old, and recently divorced after 35 years of marriage. After decades as an accountant, I discovered my passion for interior design, transforming it into a thriving business at an age when most consider slowing down. My son Justin called me a burden for years, especially after the divorce. Now he's begging to move into my new $2.5 million mansion after his life fell apart. Before I continue my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. If you relate to dealing with ungrateful family members, hit the like button and subscribe to follow my journey of reclaiming my worth. I grew up in a modest home in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I learned the value of hard work from my parents. They weren't wealthy, but they provided everything we needed through dedication and sacrifice. Those early lessons shaped me into someone who always put family first. At 22, I married my high school sweetheart, Thomas. We'd been dating since junior year, and everyone expected us to get married. I was young in love and full of dreams about our future together. I had planned to finish college with a business degree, but Thomas got accepted to medical school and we needed to make choices. Someone had to support us financially while he studied, so I put my education on hold to work full-time. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd go back to school after he established his practice. Thomas promised the same. "Once I'm a doctor, you can do whatever you want, Katie. I'll support you the way you supported me." Those words gave me comfort during the challenging early years. Justin was born 3 years into our marriage. I still remember holding him for the first time, this tiny, perfect human that we created. 2 years later, Amanda joined our family, completing what I thought was our perfect little unit. With 2 small children and Thomas still finishing his residency, my dreams of returning to college faded further into the background. I eventually took accounting classes at night and secured a position at a small local firm. It wasn't prestigious, but it offered flexible hours so I could be there for the children's school events, doctor appointments, and sick days. For 25 years, I balanced work with maintaining our household, cooking nutritious meals, keeping an immaculate home, managing schedules, and being the emotional backbone of our family. Thomas's career flourished. He joined a successful practice and built a reputation as one of the best cardiologists in the area. With success came longer hours and frequent medical conferences. Gradually, the emotional distance between us grew, though I didn't recognize the warning signs at the time. Justin showed troubling behavior regarding money from an early age. When he was 12, he complained about not having the latest video game console that everyone else had. By 16, he was embarrassed by our small house compared to his friends' homes in more affluent neighborhoods. I tried to teach him about appreciating what we had, but Thomas often undermined these lessons by giving in to Justin's demands. "He just wants what his friends have," Thomas would say. "What's the point of working hard if we can't give our children the best?" Each time Thomas said this, I felt my influence diminish. Looking back, I see how Thomas's indulgence planted seeds that would grow into Justin's sense of entitlement. Despite these challenges, I believed we were a happy family. I convinced myself that the distance with Thomas was just the natural evolution of a long marriage, and Justin's materialism was just a phase. I was proud of our comfortable life, believing I had succeeded in creating the stable, loving home I had always wanted. When Justin was accepted to an elite East Coast university, Thomas and I were ecstatic. We agreed to cover all expenses, tuition, housing, meal plans, even spending money, so Justin could focus entirely on his studies without working part-time as I had done. I remember dropping him off at his dormitory, helping arrange his things while fighting back tears. He seemed so grown up, yet still my little boy. "Mom, can you not rearrange everything?" he said irritably as I organized his desk supplies. "My roommate will think I'm weird." I stepped back, hurt but understanding. "Of course, honey, you're right. This is your space now." During his first semester, we spoke weekly, but those calls gradually became more infrequent. When he did call, it was often about needing more money for textbooks, social events, or unexpected expenses. I never questioned these requests, wanting to give him everything I hadn't had. The real change became evident during his sophomore year. Justin came home for Thanksgiving with designer clothes and a new vocabulary filled with references I didn't understand. He talked endlessly about his new friends, the son of a senator, a girl whose family owned a publishing empire, classmates who vacationed in places I had only seen in magazines. When I asked about his classes, he gave brief, vague responses before steering the conversation back to his social connections. That weekend, I overheard him on the phone with a friend laughing about the basic Thanksgiving dinner I had prepared. "Just traditional boring food," he said. "Nothing fancy. Can't wait to try that restaurant you mentioned when I get back." Junior year, I flew out to visit him for Parents' Weekend. I'd been excited for weeks, planning to take him and his friends to dinner. When I arrived at the restaurant where we'd agreed to meet, Justin was already there with 3 classmates. As I approached their table, I saw Justin's face fall. "Everyone, this is my mom," he said flatly. No hug, no warmth. One of his friends asked what I did for work. Before I could answer, Justin jumped in. "She's an accountant at some small firm back home." The dismissive tone stung more than the words. Later, when we had a moment alone, I asked, "Is everything okay, Justin? You seem uncomfortable." "It's fine," he replied tersely. "It's just, everyone else's parents are like CEOs and doctors and stuff. Dad would fit in better here." That night in my hotel room, I cried for hours. The first time Justin actually called me a burden happened during Christmas break of his senior year. Thomas and I had just given him a new laptop as an early graduation gift. Instead of gratitude, Justin complained it wasn't the most expensive model. "We thought this one had all the features you needed," I explained. "Dad could afford the better one," Justin snapped. "If you weren't such a financial burden with your little job, maybe we could live like normal people in his circle." The dining room fell silent. I waited for Thomas to defend me, to remind our son of all I had sacrificed. Instead, he stared at his plate and mumbled, "Justin, that's enough," before changing the subject. In that moment, something broke inside me. I realized Thomas hadn't just failed to defend me. He agreed with Justin. Amanda, who was home from her sophomore year at a state university, reached for my hand under the table. She had always been the peacemaker, sensitive to the feelings of others. Later that night, she came to my room. "Mom, I'm sorry about Justin. He's being awful." "Why doesn't he respect me, Amanda?" I asked, voice breaking. I think he's trying to impress Dad and those rich friends," she said cautiously. "But it's wrong. You've done everything for us." Despite her support, I could see Amanda was careful not to openly challenge her father or brother. She loved me, but she also feared being ostracized as I was becoming. After graduation, Justin landed a high-paying job at a prestigious financial firm. At 22, he was making more than I did after 25 years of work. This fact seemed to justify in his mind his dismissive attitude toward me and my contributions to the family. His wedding to Allison 3 years later perfectly encapsulated my new position in the family hierarchy. Allison came from wealth, old money as they say. The wedding was a lavish affair at her parents' estate in Connecticut. My input on planning was politely but firmly dismissed. "Mom, we're going for a certain aesthetic," Justin explained when I offered some ideas for the reception. "Allison's mother has a vision, and they're paying for most of it." At the rehearsal dinner, I found myself seated at a table far from the main party with distant relatives of Allison's family. Thomas, meanwhile, sat at the head table sharing jokes with Allison's father. I had become an afterthought in my own son's life, tolerated but not celebrated. Through it all, I maintained a smile, telling myself that motherhood meant unconditional love, regardless of how your heart breaks. But inside, a growing depression took root as I questioned my value not just to my family, but to myself. After 35 years of marriage, my world imploded on an ordinary Tuesday. I had decided to surprise Thomas by bringing lunch to his office, something I rarely did. As I approached his private office, his nurse Jenny gave me a strange look. "Dr. Marshall is with someone right now," she said awkwardly. "That's fine. I'll just leave this on his desk," I replied, reaching for the door handle. Ginny stepped forward. Katie, wait! But it was too late. I opened the door to find Thomas with his arms wrapped around a woman I recognized as Dr. Sarah Baker, a cardiologist who had joined the practice 2 years earlier. They weren't just embracing, they were kissing passionately, completely lost in each other. They jumped apart when the door opened. The look on Thomas's face wasn't even shame. It was annoyance at the interruption. Katie, he said flatly, you should have called first. Those words, not an apology, not an explanation, but an admonishment for catching him, told me everything about how little he respected me. I placed the lunch bag on his desk and walked out without a word, my entire body numb. Later that evening, when Thomas finally came home, he didn't even attempt to deny the affair. How long? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. 8 months with Sarah, he admitted. But Katie, our marriage has been over for years. We're just going through the motions. Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you suggest counseling? Thomas laughed. Actually laughed. Counseling wouldn't fix this. You're just boring, Katie. You've been content with your small life, your small job, your small ambitions. I've outgrown all of this. He gestured around our home, the home I had maintained for decades. I've been planning to leave for years, he continued. I just waited until Justin was settled in his career and Amanda finished college. Now there's no reason to pretend anymore. My 3 decades of sacrifice dismissed as boring. My dedication to our family reduced to small ambitions. Everything I thought we'd built together revealed as a sham he'd been planning to leave for years. Within days, everyone knew about the divorce. Justin called immediately, not to comfort me, but to demand an explanation. What did you do? He asked accusingly. Dad wouldn't just leave for no reason. Your father has been having an affair, I said quietly. There must be more to it than that, Justin insisted. People don't throw away 35-year marriages over a fling unless something was seriously wrong. In the weeks that followed, Justin's alliance became crystal clear. He met Thomas for dinners I wasn't invited to. He helped Thomas find a new apartment. When we began discussing the division of assets, Justin even recommended his friend as a lawyer. For Thomas, not for me. Dad built his career while you just worked that basic accounting job, Justin told me during one particularly painful conversation. You're getting way more than you contributed. The verbal abuse escalated as the divorce proceeded. Justin began referring to me exclusively as a burden. Financially, emotionally, socially. Do you know how hard it was growing up with a mother who had no ambition? He said during a family discussion about selling the house. While my friends' mothers were running companies or at least involved in meaningful charity work, you were just there, content with mediocrity. The final breaking point came 3 months after the divorce was finalized. I was still adjusting to my new reality. A modest condo purchased with my portion of the settlement, learning to live alone for the first time in my adult life. Justin and Allison invited me to dinner, which I initially took as an olive branch. Instead, they had an agenda. Mom, we've been thinking about your future, Justin began after the appetizers arrived. You're 55 now, and with the divorce settlement, you need to be smart about your finances. Before I could respond, he continued. We found this great retirement community. It's not fancy, but it's affordable, and would be much more suitable than trying to maintain that condo on your own. I stared at him stunned. A retirement community? I'm 55, not 85, and I'm perfectly capable of maintaining my own home. Justin exchanged a look with Allison. Mom, be realistic. You're alone now with limited income potential at your age. You've always been financially dependent on Dad. You need to accept that you're entering a different phase of life. A phase where I'm put out to pasture at 55, I asked, my voice rising. See, this is the emotional burden I'm talking about, Justin said to Allison as if I weren't sitting right there. She can't have a rational conversation about finances. I placed my napkin on the table and stood up. I may have failed as a mother if this is how you speak to me, but I will not fail myself any longer by sitting here and taking it. That night alone in my condo, I hit rock bottom. I scrolled through old family photos, searching for clues about when it all went wrong. When did my husband stop loving me? When did my son stop seeing me as a person worthy of basic respect? What had I done to deserve this complete dismissal of my worth? Amanda called the next day. Unlike Justin, she had maintained contact, though I could sense her discomfort at being caught between warring family factions. "Mom, Justin told me about dinner," she said cautiously. "Are you okay?" "No, honey, I'm not," I admitted, tears flowing freely. "I don't know who I am anymore if I'm not Thomas's wife or a mother you kids need." Her voice softened. "You've always been more than that, Mom. You just couldn't see it because you were so busy taking care of everyone else." Those words would echo in my mind during the dark days that followed planting a tiny seed that would eventually grow into something unexpected: hope. 6 months after the disastrous dinner with Justin and Allison, I had established a routine of sorts. I worked, came home to my empty condo, made a simple dinner, watched television, and went to bed. Weekends were the hardest. Long stretches of time with nothing but my thoughts for company. One Saturday morning, I forced myself to venture out to a local coffee shop instead of staying home. I needed to be around people, even strangers. That decision would change the course of my life. The cafe was busy with only one table available, which I was sharing with a stylish woman about my age who was spreading fabric swatches and color samples across the surface. "I'm sorry about the mess," she said with a warm smile. "Design emergency for a client who can't decide on a palette." "It's beautiful," I said, genuinely admiring the harmonious colors and textures. "The sage green with that particular blue is unexpected but perfect." She looked up surprised. "That's exactly what I've been trying to tell my client. You have an eye." She extended her hand. "I'm Sophia Montgomery, interior designer, and currently struggling to convince a tech millionaire that beige isn't the only safe color." "Katie Marshall," I replied, then winced slightly. I was still adjusting to using my maiden name again after the divorce. "I mean, Katie Wilson." Something in my expression must have revealed my discomfort because Sophia's eyes softened. "Recent change?" she asked gently. Before I knew it, I was telling this stranger about my divorce, though I spared her the details about Justin. Something about Sophia made it easy to talk. She listened without judgment, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she gathered her swatches and samples. "Katie, would you mind giving me your opinion on something? My studio is just around the corner, and I have a project I'm stuck on. You seem to have natural taste." Looking back, I realize Sophia probably didn't need my opinion at all. She was offering connection to someone who clearly needed it. But that small kindness, treating me like I had something valuable to offer, was exactly what I needed. Her studio was beautiful. An airy loft space filled with natural light fabric samples, furniture catalogs, and mood boards. As she showed me around explaining different projects, I found myself completely engrossed, asking questions and offering observations. After about an hour, Sophia looked at me thoughtfully. "Have you ever considered interior design, Katie? The way you immediately grasp the relationships between colors, textures, and spaces isn't common." I laughed. "At my age, starting over? Why not? I was 42 when I switched from corporate law to design. Best decision I ever made." The seed Amanda had planted began to sprout. "I wouldn't even know where to begin," I admitted. "There's a continuing education program at the community college. Nothing fancy but solid fundamentals. New course starts next month." That evening, instead of watching television, I researched the program Sophia had mentioned. The thought of being a student at 55 was terrifying. But for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of excitement. The first day of class, I almost turned around in the parking lot. Everyone would be younger, more tech-savvy, more relevant. What was I thinking? But I forced myself through the door. I was right about being the oldest student, but wrong about everything else. The instructor, Margot, valued my life experience and perspective. Younger students often asked for my opinion, especially when discussing design for families or professional environments I had actually worked in. With each project, my confidence grew. I discovered that all those years of creating a home, arranging furniture, selecting colors, finding the perfect accessories within our budget, had been informal training. I had an instinct for creating spaces that felt both beautiful and lived in something some of my more technically skilled classmates struggled with. 3 months into the program, Sophia invited me to shadow her on client meetings. "You need to see the business side," she explained. "Design talent is only part of the equation." Through Sophia, I began building a network. I created business cards with my name followed by interior design consultant, words that felt presumptuous at first but gradually became part of my identity. My first real client was my neighbor Janet, who needed help updating her living room on a budget. The joy I felt seeing her reaction to the transformed space was unlike anything I'd experienced in my accounting career. As I built a small portfolio of projects, I created an Instagram account showcasing my work. At first, only Sophia and a few classmates followed me, then friends of clients, then strangers. I learned about hashtags and posting schedules, feeling simultaneously ridiculous and exhilarated as a 50-something woman navigating social media for business. Then came the call that would accelerate everything. My Aunt Margaret, my father's sister, whom I'd seen only a handful of times throughout my life, had passed away. To my shock, she had left her entire estate to me. $3.2 million. I repeated, certain the lawyer had misspoken. "Yes, Mrs. Wilson. Your aunt was quite successful in her investments, lived very frugally, and never had children of her own. Her will specifically states that she admired how you prioritized family over career, a choice she herself made differently." The irony wasn't lost on me. My dedication to family, the very thing Justin and Thomas had dismissed as lack of ambition, had prompted this inheritance. For days, I moved through a fog of disbelief, alternating between grief for an aunt I barely knew and overwhelming gratitude for her generosity. When the reality finally sank in, I faced a question I'd never had the luxury of considering. What did I truly want? The answer surprised me. I didn't want to retire or travel the world. I wanted to build something of my own, to prove to myself, not to Thomas or Justin, that I was capable of success on my terms. With Sophia's mentorship and my growing skills, I had found a path that excited me. Now I had the resources to pursue it wholeheartedly. I invested in formal design credentials, taking intensive courses and workshops. I rented a small commercial space for a proper studio. Most significantly, I hired a business coach who specialized in helping women entrepreneurs. "Your age isn't a liability, it's a selling point," she insisted. "Wealthy clients in their 50s and 60s want designers who understand their lifestyle and references. You speak their language naturally." She was right. Within 6 months, I had secured 3 high-end residential projects, all clients within 10 years of my age who felt comfortable with my less trendy, more timeless approach to design. For the first time in my life, I was making decisions based solely on what I wanted, not what would accommodate everyone else's needs. The freedom was both terrifying and intoxicating. 2 years after that fateful coffee shop meeting with Sophia Katie Wilson Interior Design had become a respected name in local design circles. My client list included successful professionals, empty nesters, redesigning their homes, and even a few younger tech executives who appreciated my ability to blend comfort with sophistication. My Instagram following had grown to over 50,000. Modest by influencer standards, but impressive for a niche interior design account started by someone who once needed her son to explain how hashtags worked. Each post showcasing completed projects brought inquiries from potential clients. With success came financial security beyond what the inheritance had provided. I was earning more annually than I ever had as an accountant doing work that energized rather than drained me. This financial independence was healing in ways therapy alone couldn't achieve, concrete evidence that I was capable and valuable. After renting for 2 years, I decided it was time to create a space that would both nurture me and showcase my design philosophy. The real estate market in our area was competitive, but I had the advantage of patience and financial readiness. The house I eventually found wasn't what I expected to fall in love with. At 6,000 square feet, it was much larger than I needed as a single woman. Built in the 1920s, it had been poorly updated by various owners, stripping away much of its original character. But underneath the bad renovations, the bones were extraordinary. Soaring ceilings, extensive millwork, a sweeping staircase, and windows that flooded the spaces with light. At $2.5 million, it was a significant investment. But I recognized its potential, both as a home and as a showcase for my design abilities. The moment I signed the papers, a profound sense of accomplishment washed over me. This purchase wasn't just about acquiring property. It was reclaiming my sense of worthiness. I approached the renovation as both client and designer, a unique opportunity to create without compromise. Each decision, from restoring the original hardwood floors to selecting the perfect shade of blue for the library walls, was made with intention. This would be more than a house. It would be a physical manifestation of my journey. I designed a home office and studio that doubled as a client meeting space where they could experience my aesthetic firsthand. The kitchen, always the heart of my previous homes, was upgraded with professional-grade appliances and an island large enough for cooking classes I hope to host eventually. Most special was the garden room, a sun-drenched space overlooking the backyard where I could nurture the plants that had always brought me joy, but had been limited to a few windowsills in the condo. Here, I could finally indulge my love of greenery on a grand scale. 6 months into the renovation, Home and Design, a respected regional magazine contacted me about featuring the project. The editor had seen progress photos on my Instagram and was intrigued by the transformation. "We love the second act story," she explained. "Woman reinvents herself through design. It's inspiring." The feature, when published, generated a new wave of client inquiries and social media followers. The comments section filled with messages from women my age and older, thanking me for showing that reinvention was possible at any stage of life. Amanda was the first family member to visit the nearly completed house. She stood in the foyer, turning slowly to take in the space, her eyes wide. "Mom, this is incredible," she whispered. "Did you do all of this? With help from some excellent contractors," I said, feeling a surge of pride at my daughter's reaction. As I showed her through each room, explaining the design choices and challenges, Amanda grew quieter. In the garden room, she finally spoke what was on her mind. "I never realized how talented you are," she said softly. "All those years, we just saw you as Mom, not as someone with all this creativity inside you." Her words weren't meant to hurt, but they revealed how thoroughly my identity had been subsumed by my roles as wife and mother. "I didn't know either," I admitted. "I'm still discovering parts of myself." Amanda visited regularly after that, sometimes bringing her boyfriend Michael, who had become a steady presence in her life. Through her, I learned bits of news about Thomas and Justin, though I never asked directly. Thomas and Sarah had married quickly after our divorce was finalized. They had purchased a vacation home in Florida, stretching their finances thin. Justin and Allison had bought an expensive house in an exclusive neighborhood, along with luxury vehicles and country club memberships that reflected their desired social standing. I absorbed this information with surprising detachment. Their choices no longer affected my daily life or sense of self-worth. I had built something new, something entirely mine. On the 1-year anniversary of moving into the house, I hosted a gathering for friends, clients, and colleagues who had supported my journey. Sophia was there now, more friend than mentor. Several classmates from my first design course attended, as did neighbors who had become friends. Standing in my beautifully renovated home, surrounded by people who valued me for exactly who I was, I realized I had created not just a new career, but a new community. The loneliness that had threatened to consume me after the divorce had been replaced by meaningful connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. As guests mingled, Sophia pulled me aside. "Have you heard about Thomas's investment troubles?" I shook my head. Amanda had mentioned nothing. "Richard Campbell is a client of mine," she explained, referring to a prominent financial advisor. "He mentioned that Thomas made some unfortunate investment decisions. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to cause stress." I felt a twinge of something. not quite satisfaction, not quite concern. That's unfortunate, I said neutrally. Also, Sophia continued, lowering her voice, I heard through the grapevine that your son's firm had layoffs recently, senior positions primarily. This news was more unsettling. Despite everything, the thought of Justin struggling stirred maternal instincts I couldn't fully suppress. Later that evening, after guests had departed, I sat in my garden room reflecting on these developments. Part of me felt a vindicating sense of karmic justice, while another part worried about what these challenges might mean for Justin and Thomas. The complexity of family ties, how they could stretch and fray but never completely break, weighed on my mind as I drifted off to sleep in the home I had created for myself. 3 months after my housewarming party, the call I had both expected and dreaded finally came. Justin's name appeared on my phone screen for the first time in nearly 2 years. My heart raced as I answered. Hello, Justin, I said, keeping my voice even. Mom, he replied, his tone unexpectedly warm. How are you? It's been too long. The casual greeting, as if our estrangement had been a mutual oversight rather than his deliberate choice, momentarily left me speechless. I'm well, I finally responded. What can I do for you? Can't a son just call to check on his mother? His forced chuckle didn't disguise the tension in his voice. Actually, Amanda mentioned you've been doing some interior design work. That's great. Some interior design work. The dismissive phrasing was so familiar, it almost made me smile. Amanda had undoubtedly told him about my successful business and renovated home. Yes, I've found a new career I enjoy, I said simply. That's awesome, Mom. Really. Look, I was thinking maybe we could get together sometime, catch up properly. So much has happened. I agreed to lunch the following week at a restaurant of his choosing. Neutral territory for what would inevitably be a complicated reunion. Justin arrived 15 minutes late, looking more stressed than I remembered. The designer clothes remained, but his confident posture had diminished. Dark circles under his eyes suggested recent sleepless nights. Sorry I'm late, he said, sliding into the booth. Traffic was brutal. We engaged in awkward small talk through appetizers, generic comments about the weather, bland questions about my health. Finally, as our main courses arrived, Justin steered the conversation toward family. Have you heard from Dad lately? He asked, trying to sound casual. No, we don't keep in touch, I replied. How is he? Justin hesitated. He's adjusting. The market hasn't been kind to some of his investments. Nothing serious? He added quickly. Just not what he expected for retirement planning. I nodded, waiting. Justin hadn't arranged this lunch to discuss Thomas's portfolio. And how are things with you and Allison? I asked. His expression tightened. We're working through some stuff. The job situation has been challenging. My company went through a restructuring, and they eliminated several senior positions, including mine. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sincerely. That must be difficult. It's temporary, Justin insisted. I've got several promising leads. It's just taking longer than expected to find the right fit at my level. He took a large sip of his water before continuing. The timing isn't great with the house payment and Allison's car lease renewal. We've had to make some adjustments. I recognized this as the prelude it was, setting the stage for whatever request would follow. But I remained silent, forcing him to be direct. So, Amanda tells me you're doing really well, he said, changing tactics. She mentioned you bought a big place in Hillcrest Estates. That's a beautiful neighborhood. Yes, I've been fortunate, I acknowledged. My business is thriving, and I made a good investment in the property. Justin nodded too enthusiastically. That's amazing, Mom. Really. I always knew you had it in you. The blatant lie hung between us. He had never believed in me, never seen me as capable of anything beyond supporting others. It must be weird living in such a big place by yourself, he continued, attempting casualness. All those rooms. I use the space well, I replied. My home office and design studio take up the east wing, and I host client meetings there. The garden room has become my sanctuary. Justin leaned forward. Have you thought about maybe getting a tenant, someone to help with utilities maintenance, plus company? It can't be safe a woman alone in a big house. I nearly laughed at the transparency of his approach. I'm perfectly safe, Justin. and I enjoy my solitude after spending most of my life accommodating others' needs. He flinched slightly at the implied critique. Of course, I just thought, maybe a family member might be a good fit, someone you trust. And there it was, the real purpose of this lunch. Are you suggesting you and Allison need a place to stay? I asked directly. Justin's facade crumbled. It would just be temporary, Mom. 3 months max until I secure a new position. We've got some cash flow issues with the house, and Allison's parents are being difficult about helping. Where is Allison now? She's staying with her college roommate in Boston for a few weeks, he admitted reluctantly. We thought some space might be good while we figure things out. Translation: their marriage was in trouble, likely exacerbated by financial stress. Justin, why would you want to live with me? You've made it abundantly clear over the years that you find me boring, burdensome, and beneath your social aspirations. His face flushed. That's not fair. I was going through stuff. Dad's influence— Stop, I interrupted. Don't blame your father for your own choices. You're 32 years old, Justin. Your words and actions were your responsibility. Desperation crept into his expression. I know I said hurtful things. I was wrong. But Mom, I'm really struggling here. The job market is brutal, the house payments are killing us, and now Allison's talking about taking a break. I just need a safe landing place to regroup. And you thought of the mother you haven't spoken to in 2 years? The financial burden, the woman you suggested should be in a retirement home at 55. Tears welled in Justin's eyes, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him in years. I know I don't deserve your help, but isn't that what family is for? Being there even when it's not deserved? The question struck at the core of my own beliefs, the very philosophy that had guided my life until the divorce forced me to reconsider everything. Was unconditional support truly a virtue, or had it enabled the very behaviors that caused my pains? I need time to think about this, I said finally. This isn't a simple request given our history. Justin nodded relief, visible at not receiving an outright rejection. As we prepared to leave the restaurant, he asked hesitantly, Could I at least see the house just to get a sense of the space if you do decide to let me stay? The request seemed reasonable enough, so I agreed to show him the property the following day. When Justin pulled up to my home, his reaction was everything I might have expected 2 years earlier. Shock, poorly disguised as admiration. Wow, Mom, this is not what I pictured. It's like something from Architectural Digest. As I guided him through the house explaining the renovation choices and design elements, Justin grew increasingly quiet. In my home office, he paused to study the framed magazine feature and design awards displayed on one wall. You did all this yourself? He asked, his tone unreadable. With excellent contractors and some guidance from colleagues early on, I clarified. But yes, this is my vision. In the kitchen, he ran his hand over the marble countertop. This must have cost a fortune. Quality investments usually do, I replied. By the time we reached the guest suite, the space he would potentially occupy, Justin's demeanor had completely transformed from the confident, slightly condescending man who had arrived at the restaurant the previous day. Standing in my beautiful home, faced with tangible evidence of my success, he seemed diminished. I never knew you wanted something like this, he said quietly. You never asked, I responded. You assumed my life was small because I chose to prioritize your father's career and your upbringing. That was a choice, Justin, not a limitation of my abilities or ambitions. He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. The retirement home suggestion, that was Allison's idea. She thought it would help your finances. I shouldn't have brought it up that way. You shouldn't have brought it up at all, I corrected him. I was 55, not infirm or incapable. I know that now, he whispered. Then after a pause, the house I grew up in, you made that beautiful too, didn't you? I just didn't see it because it wasn't fancy enough compared to my friends' homes. The acknowledgement, however small, opened a tiny crack in the wall I had built around my heart. Justin, I'll consider your request to stay here temporarily, but I need something from you first. Anything, he said quickly. I need you to truly understand how deeply your words and actions hurt me. Not just an apology, genuine understanding. And I need clear boundaries established before you move in. Justin nodded, eyes glistening with tears that seemed finally genuine. I said terrible things to you, Mom. Things no son should ever say to his mother. I was so caught up in impressing Dad and fitting in with this wealthy crowd that I completely lost sight of what matters. When Dad left you, it was easier to blame you than to admit he might be wrong, might be cruel. He took a shaky breath. These past few months, losing my job, watching my marriage struggle, it's made me realize how quickly the things I valued can disappear. The people I thought were friends don't return my calls now that I'm not useful professionally. His voice broke. I keep thinking about how you never gave up on me, even when I was awful to you. And I threw that away for people who don't actually care about me. The tears he had been fighting spilled over. I don't deserve your forgiveness or your help, but I am truly sorry for the pain I caused you. Whether you let me stay here or not, I needed you to know that. In that moment, looking at my broken, humbled son, the anger I had carried for so long began to soften around the edges. Not disappearing, I wasn't naive enough to believe one tearful apology could erase years of hurt, but softening enough to consider a path forward. Let me think about it, I said again, but with less firmness than before. I'll call you tomorrow with my decision. That night, I called Amanda. Your brother wants to move in with me temporarily. What do you think? He told me he was going to ask, she admitted. He's really struggling, Mom, but you don't owe him this after how he treated you. I know, I sighed, but he's still my son. If you do let him stay, Amanda advised, set clear rules from the beginning. Justin needs structure and boundaries, things Dad never provided. After hanging up, I called Sophia, whose practical wisdom had guided me through many difficult decisions. Boundaries, she agreed immediately. Written down with consequences spelled out, and a definite end date. This is your home, your sanctuary. Don't let family obligation override the peace you've created. By morning, I had made my decision. I called Justin and outlined my terms, 3 months maximum with rent paid weekly at a fair but discounted market rate. He would respect my work schedule and client meetings. No guests without prior approval. And most importantly, he would attend weekly family therapy sessions with me to address our fractured relationship. I can't afford therapy right now, he protested weakly. I'll cover the cost, I replied. Consider it an investment in our future relationship. Justin agreed to all conditions, the desperation of his situation, leaving little room for negotiation. 3 days later, he moved into my guest suite with 2 suitcases and a laptop. A humbling reduction from the luxury lifestyle he had cultivated. The first weeks were awkward. Justin seemed constantly surprised by my schedule. The early morning client calls, the fabric vendors dropping by with samples, the contractors consulting on ongoing projects. He had never seen me as a professional with demands on my time and expertise. You're really good at this, he remarked one evening after overhearing me confidently directing a contractor about structural changes for a client's renovation. Yes, I am, I agreed without false modesty. I found something I love that values my natural abilities. Our first therapy session was painful but productive. The therapist, Dr. Levine, created a safe space for both of us to express feelings without judgment. Justin struggled to articulate why he had treated me with such disdain, eventually admitting that he had internalized Thomas's subtle dismissal of my contributions. Dad never said it directly, he explained. But he would make these comments about how he was the provider, how his career was what gave us opportunities. It was like Mom's work, both at home and her job, was just supplementary, not essential. And that gave you permission to devalue me as well? I asked. Justin winced. I guess I thought if Dad felt that way, it must be true. I wanted his approval so badly. Over subsequent sessions, we unpacked years of misunderstandings and hurt. Justin revealed how his wealthy college friends had mocked their ordinary parents, creating a culture where family loyalty was less important than social advancement. He admitted mimicking their attitudes to fit in, gradually internalizing their values until they became his own. I became someone I don't even like, he confessed during our fourth session. Someone who measured people's worth by their job title or income. At home, our relationship slowly evolved. Justin began taking initiative, preparing dinner some evenings, handling grocery shopping, even assisting with administrative tasks for my business when my assistant was overwhelmed. Amanda visited frequently, initially skeptical about Justin's change of heart, but gradually warming as she witnessed his genuine efforts. The three of us shared meals, something that hadn't happened without tension for years. One evening after Amanda had left, Justin approached me in the garden room where I was sketching ideas for a client project. "I've been meaning to ask you something," he said hesitantly. "What happened to the furniture from our old house? The pieces you loved, like Grandma's dining table and the living room cabinet?" I looked up, surprised by the question. "They're in storage. There wasn't room in the condo, and when I bought this place, I wanted a fresh start with pieces that reflected my new aesthetic." "I remember how you used to polish that cabinet every Sunday," Justin said softly. "I never understood why it mattered so much to you." "It was my great-grandmother's, one of the few family heirlooms we had." I set down my pencil. "Why do you ask?" Justin shifted uncomfortably. "I was thinking, maybe some of those pieces could find a place here. Not if they don't fit your design, of course," he added quickly. "But they're part of your history too, not just the new you, but all of you." The suggestion, this acknowledgement that my past had value, touched me deeply. "I'll think about it," I promised. 2 months into Justin's stay, his job situation improved. A former colleague had started at a new firm and recruited Justin for a position, not as senior or highly paid as his previous role, but stable and respectable. Around the same time, Allison returned from Boston and they began their own couples therapy. As the 3-month mark approached, I found myself with mixed feelings about Justin's impending departure. Our relationship had improved dramatically, but it remained fragile, a sapling that needed continued nurturing. During our final scheduled therapy session, Dr. Levine asked us both to reflect on what we had learned. Justin spoke first. "I've learned that success isn't just about title or salary. My mom built something meaningful from nothing through creativity and hard work. That's true success." He turned to me. "I've also learned how much damage can be done by taking people for granted, especially those who love you unconditionally." When my turn came, I considered carefully before speaking. "I've learned that setting boundaries doesn't mean withdrawing love. For too long, I thought being a good mother meant accepting any treatment, making myself smaller to build others up. Now I understand that respecting myself sets a better example than endless sacrifice." After a pause, I continued. "I've also learned that people can change, can grow when given the opportunity and proper motivation. And that forgiveness, while not forgetting, opens doors that resentment keeps firmly shut." As we left the therapist's office, Justin asked, "What happens now, Mom? My 3 months are almost up." I had been considering this question for weeks. "I think you and Allison need your own space to rebuild your marriage, but I'd like our Sunday dinners to continue. And maybe you could help with some of the business operations. You have skills I could use, and my client list is growing faster than I can manage alone." Justin's face brightened. "You'd want to work with me after everything, on a trial basis," I clarified, "with clear professional boundaries and expectations. No special treatment because you're my son." "I wouldn't want special treatment," he assured me. "I'd want to earn my place, prove my value." The following weekend, Justin moved out as planned into a modest apartment he and Allison had rented near her new job. He left behind something unexpected, a beautifully framed collage of family photos spanning decades, including recent ones of my renovated home and design projects. "To remember all the chapters of your story," the card read, "not just the new ones." 2 years have passed since Justin moved out of my house and into his own place with Allison. Our relationship continues to evolve with occasional setbacks, but consistent progress. The scars remain. Certain topics still trigger old hurts, and sometimes I catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Justin to revert to his former dismissive self. But those moments grow rarer with time. My business has expanded beyond my wildest expectations. I now have a team of 3 designers working under my direction, with Justin handling operations and financial management part-time. His background in finance, once wielded as proof of his superiority, now serves our family business. The irony isn't lost on either of us. Amanda and Michael married last spring in a ceremony held in my garden. Unlike Justin's wedding years ago, this celebration felt genuinely inclusive, with both sides of the family equally valued. Thomas attended with Sarah, and while our interaction was cordial rather than warm, there was an absence of animosity that felt like its own kind of healing. Justin and Allison are expecting their first child, my first grandchild, in 3 months. The pregnancy has sparked deep conversations about family patterns and the legacy we pass down through generations. I worry sometimes, Justin confided recently, about what kind of father I'll be. Dad wasn't exactly the best role model for respecting women or valuing contributions beyond financial ones. Awareness is the first step to breaking patterns, I reminded him. You're already miles ahead by recognizing the potential pitfall. I want my child to see all forms of success, he continued, not just the obvious ones with fancy titles and big paychecks. The lessons I've learned through this journey have changed me in profound ways. I've discovered that standing up for yourself doesn't make you selfish. It establishes a foundation for healthier relationships. That it's never too late to reinvent yourself, to discover passions and talents that circumstances may have buried. Most importantly, I've learned that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting. I haven't forgotten the pain of being called a burden, of being discarded after decades of devotion. But I've chosen to not let that pain define my relationships moving forward. Some might question why I gave Justin another chance, why I didn't slam the door when he came begging for help. The answer isn't simple. It wasn't just maternal love, though, that remained despite everything. It wasn't weakness or fear of being alone. It was a conscious choice to leave room for growth, his and mine. People can change when life humbles them, when circumstances force them to confront their mistakes and misconceptions. Not everyone, certainly. Some remain trapped in patterns of entitlement or cruelty, regardless of consequences. But I chose to believe my son could be more than the worst version of himself I had witnessed. That choice has been validated not just by Justin's changed behavior, but by my own increased happiness. The weight of resentment I carried lightened with each genuine step he took toward understanding and amends. My home remains my sanctuary, the physical manifestation of my rebirth after decades of living primarily for others. I've added a few pieces from our old house, as Justin suggested now, displayed with intention rather than obligation. These connections to my past remind me that growth doesn't require erasure of what came before. My professional success continues to surprise and delight me. Each new project brings challenges that keep me engaged and learning. At 60, I have more energy and passion for my work than I ever did in my accounting career. If I could share one message from my experience, it would be this: your value was never determined by how others treated you. The diminishment I accepted was never a reflection of my worth, but of others' limitations in seeing it. For anyone feeling trapped in thankless roles dismissed by those who should appreciate you most, know that it's never too late to reclaim your sense of self. The journey isn't easy, and the hurt doesn't vanish overnight. But beyond the pain lies possibility. Has this story resonated with you? Have you ever felt undervalued by family, or had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found inspiration in my journey from dismissed to determined, please like and subscribe to follow more stories of transformation. Remember, sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is permission to shine, even when those closest to us tried to dim our light. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to write your own second chapter, whatever that might look like.